Welcome, everybody, to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick. I'm Rick, and this is my very able co-host, Emily.
Hello.
We are at episode number 23. Today's subject is unity in the community, and it's not only episode number 23, but this is the last episode of 2024.
That's
However, I know
crazy.
it is crazy, yeah, but
Wow.
however, we'll get back to that. And so, as I say at the beginning of every episode, you do not have to be a firefighter to listen to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick,
Mhm.
igniting leadership excellence, because we cover leadership topics that go all over the place, but we do not approach it from a woke worldview. We approach our lessons, our topics here from a biblical worldview.
Yeah.
Now, back in October in episode 18, we did one called Disunity in the Community. And we talked about the conflict that occurred during the July 1863 Gettysburg campaign between two Union generals,
hmm
George Meade and Dan Sickles. And we talked about the impact on unity. At the end of that episode, I said that at some point in the future, we would take a look at a different viewpoint.
Yeah. So we do recommend that if you have not listened to that episode yet, go back and listen to that one.
Good point.
And then you can either come back to this one or watch it
Yeah.
afterwards.
Uh-huh.
So, as we promised, we are today going to talk about unity in the community. That is a tongue twister.
Yeah. Unity in the community.
So let's start out with Psalm 131 says, "Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity." But before we talk about how to achieve unity in the community, let's look at another example from the same day at Gettysburg in Pennsylvania that we discussed in episode 18.
You get a kick out of saying that unity in
I
the
know
community thing, don't you?
I feel like I'm gonna get a tongue tie over here.
Yeah. So briefly, folks, this is not a history lesson, but you do need to know, other things that were taking place on that particular day, July 2nd, 1863, in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, in particular on Little Round Top. There was the 20th Maine, led by the commanding officer, Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, Lieutenant Colonel, I should say, at that point, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain. And he was a virtuous man of character. He had a strong set of biblical, moral, and ethical values. Now, earlier this year, for our wedding anniversary, my wife got me a book. Hold it up here. It's called On Great Fields, The Life and Unlikely Heroism of Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain,
It's a big
written
book.
by Ronald C. White. Now, I learned about this book after listening to another podcast called The School of War, and that host, Aaron McLean, interviewed White. And I've always had an interest in Chamberlain and his character. And there's times that, depending on how much you read on the Civil War or go to the battlefield, you may hear a lot of bad mouthing of Chamberlain.
Yeah.
White has written a fantastic biography on Chamberlain, covering his entire life, and he takes care of things and addresses areas that other authors either willingly neglect or they just don't even research it whatsoever. And that's the biblical aspect, the Christian aspect of Chamberlain. It's a great book. He was not educated. He, being Chamberlain, was not West Point educated. He was educated at Bowdoin College in Maine, later became a professor there. When the Civil War broke out, he turned down the rank of colonel because he said he wanted to learn the military trade first. He became a student of learning the military maneuvers and so forth like that. His commanding officer was Colonel Adelbert Ames, and he reported about Chamberlain, quote, is a gentleman of the highest moral, intellectual, and literary worth. Eventually, Chamberlain did become the commanding officer of the 20th Maine, and he molded that regiment into an effective team, including renegades from the 2nd Maine.
Wow.
And actually, Emily, that ties in with our past episode earlier this month when we were talking about organizations and
Mm,
units and
yeah.
shifts, taking on the, the personality of the leader. And
Yeah.
this certainly happened here.
Wow. So it certainly sounds like Chamberlain led by example,
Mhm.
and that is one important step towards building team unity. So, how do we achieve unity then in the community?
Yeah. How do we achieve unity in the community? Because we don't want disunity in the community. In the last episode, I talked about one of the first things that we need to do in achieving unity is setting expectations.
Mm,
The
mhm.
organization should already have expectations, but the leader should have expectations as well that fall in line with the overall expectations. And we could really get off into the weeds with this one right here because you don't want to create a situation that there's two competing interests that are taking place within the organization. No,
Yeah.
so hey, Rick, what are you talking about? Setting expectations that are different from the organizations. Well, the organizational expectations, folks, are overarching. They're broad and overarching. I'm talking about now narrowing it down to your particular work area, your particular unit. You know, if you expect a report to be issued from your subordinates, let them know that, hey, I want, use a fire scenario. When I first took over my shift as a battalion chief, I wanted to get an idea of where everything was at from a training perspective. And I can't be out there in the station all the time seeing what everybody was doing. I conducted drills and I could observe there and I could start to get an idea of where they were at with their training. And I could also see that come about from the scene of an emergency. But what expected from the officers on my shift was to provide a monthly training report of what type of training that they were doing as individuals and then what type of training that they were doing at the station level. So that was an expectation of mine. It wasn't an expectation of the fire department. Now, if I had that expectation, but I didn't let them know that, and then at the end of the month, I say, "Hey, how come you're not telling me this?" Like, well, you
Mhm.
never said anything.
Yeah.
So establishing clear cut expectations by the organization and adhere to them.
Yeah.
And that starts to lay the ground for unity in the community. And here's another one that's very important. Don't play favoritism. Playing favorites is a surefire formula to disunity in the community.
For
Now,
sure.
you may think that nobody sees what's going on, but they do. Leaders who spend all their time with one or just two subordinates and nobody else, yeah, let's go. What's going on here? And I saw that play out in the fire department, and consequently, those ones got named the fair-haired golden children.
Mm,
That's like they could do no wrong because now they're being protected by the supervisor.
yeah.
That's that favoritism. And I know you've seen that same thing take place
Absolutely.
yourself, Emily,
Yeah.
where you worked at. Because folks, for those of you who don't know our backgrounds, you may have just tuned in for the first time. I spent 37 years in the fire service. My last department, I was there just about 30 years. And in the last 15 of those years, I was a battalion chief, the shift commander, and the training chief. And I had been in the Marine Corps and in the Air Force. Emily,
Yeah.
she worked in human resources in another city.
Yep.
And so we both see these things play out on both sides.
And on a personal level for me
Yeah, yes.
and for you too with favoritism
Yeah. Yeah.
being on the other end.
And
Not the favorite one.
yeah, no, right.
Yeah.
Not definitely not the
Yeah.
favored one, but people see that. People see that and it starts that divide.
Yeah.
You're not going to have unity in the community when the leaders are playing favorites. It creates that divide and it sets up an us versus them.
Yeah. Like
And
kind of division, well, obviously division and taking sides.
yes, yep,
Hmm.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
that consistency in how you as the leader perform and act. Consistency played out for me in a number of different areas, but one of them was at the scene of an emergency. You
Mm,
got to trust your people. You
yeah.
got to trust your people. And if you're playing micromanager and you're always following up on them, that tears down that unity and it creates disunity. It's not creating unity. Lay out those expectations, create those ditch banks for your subordinates to operate in, and then stand back. Now, that doesn't mean you take your hands off the wheel because you, as the leader, you still have a responsibility to check in on people and make sure that they're doing what they need to be doing.
Yeah.
But create that unity in there and break down barriers, get to know people. For people who have followed our podcast, you've heard me say this umpteen million times this year. Get to know your people. You must build relationships. Well, Rick, I'm kind of, what they call an introvert. And so I really don't like to get to know people. Well, hey, pull your head out of your rear end, and spend time with people. If you don't know how to communicate with others, well, the first thing I got to ask is who in the world put you in that position to begin with?
Yeah.
You just promoted on technical competence alone and not the ability to get along with people because that creates issues
Yeah.
out there. And there's a number of resources that you could go, number of sources. That's one of the areas that I work in with my business is helping people overcome those shortcomings so that they can develop better relationships with their subordinates and with their coworkers because that's vital to creating that unity.
Yeah, and one of those big ones is the DISC assessment that you do,
Yes.
where it really helps you learn what your communication
Mhm.
style is and learn more about yourself and then how to communicate with others
Yeah,
as well. So
yeah, that's right.
very, very
Yeah,
valuable.
thank you. And what Emily is referring to is because some people don't know what DISC is. It's DISC. D stands for dominant. I is influencing. S is steady. And C is correct. And through the John Maxwell leadership team, I've been certified as not only a trainer, but also as a DISC consultant. And our report, there's areas in our report that are proprietary that you're not going to see in
Yeah.
others. And one of them, one of them is called the power disc, and it points out people's strengths. But the overall page, or excuse me, it's overall 30-page report, and it does center on communications. And it's amazing how accurate it is. Matter of fact, if I may,
I was,
Emily,
yeah.
yeah, why don't you tell our listeners your experience with it?
Yeah, well, I had experience with it in my local government job, but I found that your DISC assessment in particular was way more valuable than the one that I did at the city because of the communication
Mhm.
and stuff. And it doesn't put you in a box. It just really explains why you're the way you are or think or communicate. And it was very I don't know, like life changing and realizing oh, this is why I am the way I am
Well, let's be
with
upfront and honest
communication.
with our listeners here. How receptive were you when I offered the disc report to you initially? What was your reaction?
Had a lot going on in my life back then, so I don't like to be put in a box.
I
So
would
I think it was like, nope, I've already done it. I don't want to be put in a box. But I would say that this particular one does not put you in a box like something like the Enneagram tries to do or those other personality assessments. It really is just like a tool in your toolbox to know how to better communicate.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And
Very valuable for relationships. Like you and even went on she calls it a disc date to learn how you guys need to form relationships.
yeah, what Emily's talking about is my wife also took the disc assessment, and then we did go on a disc date. And at that point, we've been married 36 years, and it helped us improve in our communications. So that disc report that I have available, and if you'd like to learn more, my website is in the show notes, and we'll
Yeah.
talk about how you could contact me, here at the end of the show. But that disc report is a fantastic tool where you can see where you lie, how you react under stress, and how to better communicate with other people. And I guarantee you, when you learn how to communicate with people and you improve your communication skills,
Life changing.
yes, and your leadership skills go up.
Yeah.
People say, "Wow, what happened to her? What happened to him?" And I cannot extol the virtues of this assessment more, because myself, I had always been very hesitant at those type of assessments, saying, "Yeah, that stuff's a bunch of baloney." I've done it twice now, because the leader who does it with the John Maxwell team recommends you do it every 2 years, because of things that change in our life and things that change, in careers and so forth like that. And is it 100% accurate? No, it's not 100% accurate. It was 99% accurate.
Hmm.
'Cause when I went through that, I only found one minor area that I disagreed with.
Yeah.
And Emily, I think you
Yeah.
fell into that, and others that I have administered
Yeah.
that disc assessment to have heard the same thing. So it's a consistency in your communication. It also avoids that favoritism thing as well.
Yeah.
Because where a favoritism thing can get started is because we get comfortable talking to people that we are like.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get attracted to them, they get attracted to us, what Maxwell refers to as the law of magnetism. And it goes, but that's the law of magnetism part that can go bad. It
Yeah.
goes too far to where it becomes favoritism. But when we learn how to better communicate with each other,
Hmm.
now you're out there talking to others that, you know what? They're not like you. They're not like me. And frankly, if everybody in the world was like me,
I mean, they would have some Jersey charm
yeah,
probably,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah,
only you can have the
yeah,
Jersey
they
charm.
get some of that Jersey too. So we probably should move on here,
Yeah.
Emily.
So moving on, James 1, 5 through 6 says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith with no doubting, for he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind.
Yeah.
So, as we've been talking about communication, it's really important in building unity to have clear, honest, truthful, and frequent communication.
Mhm.
Getting like all tongue tied over here.
Can
Um,
I, before you go on, may I
Absolutely.
interrupt, as I just thought of a circumstance when you mentioned that clear and honest communication years back. I remember our shift commander had made a station visit, and this was when I was a lieutenant. And a question was posed to him, and we were standing around in the day room, and so my driver asked him a question, and he was hemming and hawing around, well, that type of thing. And there was a plant over in the corner of the room. So my driver went over and he grabbed the plant, he put it in the middle of the room, and he said, "There's something for you to dance around." That, it was that lack of what you
Yeah.
just said right there. So thank
Yeah.
you for allowing me to interrupt that.
Of course. So spending time with people who you work for will build that trust and respect by you pass on information, you ask questions, you listen to feedback.
Hmm.
I think listen is the key because there's a
It is.
difference between hearing and listening.
Yeah. What's your opinion of the difference between the two?
Hearing is like you're just like, uh-huh, 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 but it's not like it's not processing in like your brain. You're just um yeah, you're just entertaining them,
Mhm.
just
Yeah, that's good.
making them
That's
look
good.
like
Yeah.
that you're listening, but you truly aren't.
Hmm.
You're in a different world. Listening is that you're hearing them, you're seeing them, and you're understanding
Hmm.
them, or you're trying to understand them.
Hmm.
So listening to that feedback is showing you that you really care about the feedback that they have to give to you. Um, you do not belittle people or act superior to them. And I think that also comes with the listening to feedback is having that like open line of communication. You treat people as adults, that's big.
Yeah.
And then you praise in public and discipline in
Mhm.
private.
Yeah, when you're talking about listening to asking questions, listening to feedback, folks, when you're in a leadership position, if you've created a safe environment, people are going to ask you some questions that may make you feel uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And you initially may feel like you're being challenged by them, and you probably are being challenged by them. But listen to this quote from Dwight D. Eisenhower, General Eisenhower, and later President Eisenhower, when he said, "Let us never confuse honest dissent with disloyal subversion."
Hmm.
So just because somebody asks the leader a question does not mean that they are being subversive. That does not mean that they are challenging in a bad way. It could be that they are asking the question and it's coming across as challenging is because you have been confusing in your communication. You haven't been clear, like Emily was talking about. And you've danced around issues and you're creating confusion. Or it could be that they see something in you that does not align and it's creating more disunity than the unity. But I know from personal experience that when you're spending time with the people and you allow them to ask those tough questions of you, that builds unity.
Mhm.
Because if you shut them down, you belittle them, or you're superior to them in any way, I 100% guarantee they're not going to ask those questions again. I know
Yeah.
because I've had that happen where I've been put down, I've been belittled
Oh, yeah.
in front of other people. And it's like, okay, you clown, I'm not going to ask any questions of you
Yeah.
anymore. And so that does not build that does not build that unity. And if they ask you a question and you can't answer it from a standpoint of a legal matter, just say so. Don't spit out some HR line, the pre-programmed line. Just say, hey, listen, yeah, there's a process that takes place here. It's due process, and say, would you want me talking about you to everybody else? If you were involved in a problem, because folks, most people know when somebody's in trouble, unless it's just a massively large organization. But even if it's a massively large organization, those people who are closer, they know when Bill or Betty are in trouble.
Yeah.
And so how the leader responds to that, that's going to contribute either to unity or disunity. What I found was when I was asked some of those questions is they were asking me from the standpoint just to find out is whether or not I was going to be upright and honest with them, or if I was going to spit out the department HR line of, I'm sorry, I cannot talk about this because this is a legal matter, blah, 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 like that. How will I handle it? It's like, yep, you guys know, yep, there's an issue there. There's a problem. It's being dealt with. And that's all that I can say about that matter. And I would follow it up with
Mhm.
is if you were in that position, would you want me out talking about you?
Mhm.
And it's like, no. And so many times I get, oh, we are just curious of what you were going to say if you would actually acknowledge it.
Mhm.
And that put an end to it, right there. Now, some people who might be listening who are in the legal departments or HR departments, you might be getting your underwear all up in a wad right now, so take a breath, relax, look at reality, you know, out there in life. So I want to read an excerpt from an article, Emily, from the New York Times
Yeah.
by the reporter Andy McCullough. And this was about the October 31st LA Dodgers and their World Series win over the Yankees this year.
Mhm.
And he wrote in the article, Kiki Hernandez played for Dave Roberts, who is the coach of the Dodgers. Kiki Hernandez played for Roberts for 5 years before departing in free agency. Upon his return to the Dodgers in 2023, Hernandez noticed Roberts had improved as a communicator.
Oh, what a concept.
Yes. Hernandez said, Dave is such a nice guy. He's such a positive, energetic personality. I think in the first couple of years, it was hard for him to have the tough
Mhm.
conversations. As a manager and as a good communicator, you have to be willing to be 1000% honest and stand by, and
Mhm.
have the tough conversations. I feel
Yeah.
like that's been the biggest difference,
Wow.
unquote. That's what Kiki Hernandez said about Dave Roberts. And we watched the World Series. We like watching that at the end of the year,
Yeah, it was fun.
and we like seeing the action that takes place. And yeah, sometimes baseball can get a little bit of boring, but
Not like football.
yeah, but I especially like watching the behavior that takes place. How do the managers and the coaches handle the players?
Mhm.
How are the responses, to when the star player strikes out?
Yeah.
You know, what happens? Look at some of these guys that they're on TV, worldwide TV. Oh, I can't pronounce his name correctly. Forgive me. The Japanese player, Ohani, I think that was his name, from
Yeah.
the
I
Dodgers.
don't remember.
Well, they were watching in Japan.
Yeah.
So, military's watching worldwide. So these things are being broadcast worldwide, worldwide. But then when a player gets thrown out or he gets struck out and he's walking back to the dugout and he beats his baseball bat on the ground, or he takes his helmet and he slings it across the dugout. Hey, good job, buddy. You're setting a very, very bad example for all the thousands and thousands of kids that are watching you do that. So that's kind of a little bit off topic, what we're talking about. Well, yeah, actually,
Free
it's
advice.
not. Yeah, it's free
Yeah.
advice, But when I looked at what's taking place there in the Dodgers dugout and tying it back into unity in the community, is it takes teamwork. It takes teamwork to get there
Yeah.
to the World Series on both parts. This year for the Yankees and for the Dodgers, but there's a unity that exists, and it's interesting to watch the dynamics when the Dodgers went ahead pretty quickly in the series, and then the Yankees pulled back out of that. But it's that communication that we're talking about, and apparently there, whatever happened with Dave Roberts, according to Kiki Hernandez, Dave Roberts' communications improved. So where else can you develop unity in the community?
Mhm.
For us in the fire service, any emergency services, military, is training and drills. And then also afterwards, after action reviews, evaluated experience, people, not just experiences, but is evaluated experiences. You working on a major project, the project gets done, bring your team together and talk about what went right, what was planned, what went right. You know, did it go according to plan? If not, why not? Yeah, and lay things out there. These are type of situations where you can build that unity in the community.
Absolutely.
And it's important for us to repeat this one right here. The leader must have strong character and build a strong team of people with character, not
Yeah.
characters, but character.
Yeah.
So, Emily, as we wrap up here, anything else you'd like to add? Any final thoughts?
Well, I know we already touched on it, but I think with the development part, doing the disc assessment as a team
Mhm.
instead of just individually and then going through it together, like as a team, and maybe even like the leadership game, like doing
Yes.
things that build that team
Mhm.
community and unity
Yes.
together.
And thank you for mentioning that one too. That's another assessment tool that I have available to me. It's referred to as the leadership game. Don't let that name throw you, though. All the questions come from John Maxwell's books. And, I can offer this to leadership teams. Maximum, I'd say 10 people. If it went above that, it starts to become too long, too drug out. But I guarantee you, that you will be asked questions that you're not bringing up in your normal staff
Yeah.
meetings. So
Yeah.
that's it for episode number 23, Unity in the Community. We've talked about expectations, tied that back into episode number 22, and we really hit on communication today
Yeah.
as being one of those key things in building unity in the community. So this is the last episode, folks, for 2024.
Wow.
Emily and I, we want to wish you and your families all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Our next episode for season 2 will air on January 2nd of 2025. So if you found this episode to be useful and you then like it, subscribe, share, visit my website at fireofficerleadershipacademy.com. Link is in the show notes. You can learn more about the services I offer. You can learn more about how you can reach out to me and find out about the DISC assessment. Find out about how I can come in and help your team grow and develop through either the DISC or that leadership game. And also on my website, you'll find my weekly leadership blog that's posted every Monday at 5 a.m. Mountain Time and then reposted on my LinkedIn page on Wednesdays. So thank you for tuning in this year. Emily and I have certainly enjoyed this, and we're
Yeah.
looking forward to continuing Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick, igniting leadership excellence in 2025. So we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.